Oh, I see. Do you have either handout, Marla?
I don't think I received anything that was sent to the remote participants.
Okay.
I have the chance, though. Don't worry about it, Flint. I'll get it from someone else.
We'll get them to you. You don't need them right away. Ryan, did you get that? Yeah, she doesn't have either handout. Okay. Good. Can you help me? Just stand right there and pick up my laptop. Just straight up. Sir. Who's doing the pre-chant? I am. We can stay sitting. Paige.
Subtle, vast, and deep, delightful, and lovely. You now feel it, receive it, and embody its Christ. You allow us to realize its true meaning.
Yes, ears. This is a different chant for me, as I've said, so I think it's wonderful. The Dharma is subtle, vast, and deep, delightful and lovely. That's what you just chanted, right? That part?
Yeah.
So change the Dharma is the Dharma, and look out at all the people in the room and say, you are, instead of what the Dharma is, and say the line again. You are subtle, vast, and deep, delightful, and lovely. We now have a chance to see each other. Say that. We have a chance to see each other, hear each other, feel each other, receive each other, and embody this practice together. Fiddling with it as we go. We vow to realize our true meaning. It's nice, huh?
Yes.
Yeah. I think it's actually true. Not just messing around. Life is sacred and short, so we hold on to each other. Holding on for dear life, because that's what makes life dear. And today, I want to continue that bridge from the way we talked about the history and the meaning of Dharma and the way we enacted it yesterday afternoon in inquiry, and continue our immersion in Dharma by bringing it to life. Remember, towards the end, we were reflecting on how the spoken and enacted Dharma is very different than reading it. So this is what we're going to play with a little bit. When I say play, I mean joyous and beautiful. I don't mean frivolous in that way. So the spoken word and the stories of relationships in our lineage, this is where the eternal Dharma, remember that first one, manifest, is in actuality. That's what we're just chanting. So let's continue to bring the Dharma to life in our lives, as our lives. And as we do, we encounter the first problem. Well, one of them. A lot of problems. But this is the textual problem. So Bodhidharma is the mythological guy, probably, that brought Buddhism from India into China. And someone asked him, what is Zen? And he said, a special transmission outside of the scriptures, not dependent on words and letters, pointing directly at the human mind. And so people were interested in sutras and teachings and all this stuff, which was the way the Indian philosophical system worked a lot. But coming into China, he brought it and he said, no, Zen is a special transmission outside of the scriptures, not dependent on words and letters, but pointing directly at who and what you are. Like, oh, okay. Well, then what do you do with the sutras and all the words? He threw up kind of a challenge, didn't he? If the eternal Dharma, which you can see manifesting in phenomena, which you can follow on a path, and you can use teachings to assist you in that. Remember, those are the 4 things we looked at. But if you're not to depend on words and letters or scriptures, then so how are you going to teach? What's this thing for? And all the books. So when we meet an inquiry, for example, that's our local example right now. Do you know what's going to happen? Is it scripted? Is there anything we're depending on? Well, what are we depending on? What? Showing up? Throwing up. That sometimes happens. Showing up and meeting and presence and intimate, there's something alive, dynamic. Striving to teach the unteachable is the expression of Buddha's mind itself. The wholehearted effort to sit in that chair and meet, not knowing what's going to happen and having no script for it, is the expression of Buddha's mind. You get that? It's kind of weird. But I see CJ looking at me like, dude, that's what we're talking about, isn't it? Those 4 things, the teachings flow along a path of everyday phenomena manifesting within the eternal Dharma right here like this. And when the Buddha's teachings and influence came into China, and especially during the Tang Dynasty, the old teachers began to develop a way to teach, which wasn't like the Eightfold Path, the Fourfold this, the 7 factors of that. That was the Indian way of understanding things, which is fine, but it was a different way. And they developed what you might call encounter dialogue, what we call inquiry. And they recorded some of what these stories that happened, which were particularly powerful, and they called them koans. Some of these interactions we could have recorded and written down, and if they're important enough or universal enough, they get passed on. And during that time, one of the old teachers, Zhaozhou, it's a great name, isn't it? They call you Zhaozhou. Someone asked him, what is meditation? And he said, it's non-meditation. Well, then why do you call it non-meditation? If meditation? And he says, because it's alive. You can't box it into meditation. It's aliveness. Which is some of why we say, and Dogen wrote very clearly, that Zazen isn't meditation. It's not a yogic activity that you're engaged in and employing to get a result which will be beneficial to you. There are many meditations like that, and they're great, and they're really beneficial. That's not Zazen. Zazen is sitting upright in a dignified way, awake in the midst of your life and expressing the innate wakefulness, which is the ground of your being. It's a little ceremony to express the ground of your being, that you are already awake, although you don't feel like it. Your essence is already wakefulness, even though it doesn't seem like that. This is the deeply powerful spiritual version of fake it till you make. Not really, but it's that it feels like that, and that's why we ask you to sit in certain ways in such a dignified fashion, because you're expressing something. And when you do that over time and just sit in the midst of your life, this profound, not anything that we're doing makes a big difference. Some of you have heard the famous quip from Kodo Sawaki Roshi, who revived a lot of things in Soto Zen, including the sewing of the okesa. Oh, I forgot my rakusu. It's on the altar. Would you bring it to me? I took it off because I had to go to the bathroom. You can't wear it in the bathroom. And so hold it like this. I bow to you. You offer it to me. You bow. I digress. There's a famous koan about this. Yeah. The master asked his attendant to bring him his okesa, his robe, to put on. And then the teacher asked the student, as he's putting it on, it wraps around him, what's under this robe? And the student said, I don't know, doesn't know what he's asking. And so the teacher says, you ask me. And so the student says, intimacy, and even deeper intimacy. But you feel it when you offer it, don't you? Yeah. These are the kind of things they get that recorded it. That's how it's alive. So the koans are in a totally different category than the sutras and other kinds of writing about Buddhism. And the reason they're in a different category is because they don't give you or me information, or they don't preserve knowledge, like some treatise. They don't offer you information and they don't give you knowledge. And that's why they're so difficult for us, because we keep looking for the information. It's got to be in there somewhere. And the knowledge that's seemingly buried in this strange story where people act really weird and say odd things. And because we keep trying to make it make sense, we look for the knowledge and we look for the information, we feel frustrated. Right? I mean, these koans are like, what the hell? Give me a break. It doesn't make any sense. Because the clue, they don't work that way. They're an invitation to stand where the ancients stood and experience what they were experiencing when they were standing there and uttering those words in those dialogues. It's like, try this, come here. What happens to you when you let go of your striving to learn something and know something, or to be good at something, or to be pleasing to your teacher? And when someone just says, do this, you just stand up and go do it and follow the instructions, and something happens. And that intention from the teacher's side to offer something, see how to say this. When I'm sitting in my seat in inquiry, I don't have like a reference book or stuff I'm trying to teach. I have no earthly idea. But my willingness to meet what's there and to respond in some way that has immediacy and intimacy, and maybe can open the space between us. Remember, we talked about the space between? This is you and me, right? Yeah. Remember that intention, that willingness to teach the unteachable and express the inconceivable into that space. That's Buddha's mind. Buddha's mind isn't some doctrine. It's that willingness and that intention. And we do it with our bodies, and we do it in our relationships. Some of you have heard me, someone said, what would you call it? I said, the embodied inconceivable. It's inconceivable, but it is embodied. You can't understand it, but you can realize it. You can recognize it and wake up to it. When I was doing some reading about this, it's really interesting stories. And one of them, this is a very truncated version of a longer, beautiful story, where there was a princess in an ancient, I don't know where they live, castle, something, in their special privileged area. And this princess got around, apparently. She had a lover, and who she was very devoted to, but, had to be a secret. And so and the lover knew, so he would walk near the place where she lived, and then she would call for her attendant and her maid to come and vocalize that quite loudly, not because she wanted her maid to come, but because she wanted him to hear her voice. And it was the intention to open the space between them that was difficult to open, that what she was doing. And it's more like that than it is about texting or, getting the information. But sometimes don't you, it's like looking at a child, an infant. just looking in the eyes, or you hear the sounds, which aren't words, but it's complete, isn't it? And no information is transferred, although you can make up information, you can project onto it, you can make it have a meaning, but before you make it have a meaning, the connection's already happened, hasn't it? That's what we're talking about. It's the embodied presence, the action within the relationship, just the sound of our voices, the look in an eye, the feel of the warmth of someone who's close transmits something. And just as another bit of history and also cultural context, there was a super long history in India where Buddhism first developed from the Hindu tradition of reincarnation. So that was just part of the culture. Mm-hmm. And so in the Indian culture, enlightenment or nirvana meant practicing so that you ended the recurring cycle of birth and death. Mm-hmm. So you know, that was a natural way, and it was part of Indian Buddhism at that time. But China didn't have that kind of historical thing in their culture. So in China, that view kind of gave way to enlightenment that meant the return to an original state of harmony in the inner sort of rhythm of the universe, the Tao. You know, it was Taoist because that's what was there. In fact, many scholars will say that Zen is basically Taoism disguised as Buddhism. There's a lot in that you could follow, but we spoke about this later as Buddha nature. So whereas enlightenment in the Indian system was you practice to achieve something so you can get free of suffering because of the recurring, Chinese didn't think about it that way. They thought it as, oh, you practice to return to an original source and express your harmony with all beings and all things, the Tao. That's a big difference. And there's another little quirky piece. You know how in Zen there's often, or those of you that study it, there's often an emphasis on lineage and who your ancestors were. We venerate them in the services. And by the way, in the big long services in the temples, we chant in the morning the names of all the ancestors from Shakyamuni Buddha all the way to Suzuki Roshi, through India, then through China, then through Japan. The list is really long. And of course, that original lineage is all guys. But now we've resurrected the female lineage. And then we chant all the women's names. It takes about half an hour. So in China, the long history wasn't about reincarnation. The long history was in ancestor veneration and even ancestor worship, right? Therefore, the establishment of lineage, family trees of transmission, even if they were partially constructed now and then, because this gave the practitioners replacement families. That was your family. If you left home, in fact, when you're a monk, you're called a home leaver. You leave home. But now you have a replacement family. You have your lineage. And that's the way Zen found its way in Chinese culture. That's kind of interesting, isn't it? That these things take shape. You know, it's said that Buddhism, classically, Buddhism always takes the shape of the container into which it's poured. And classically, that has taken about 500 years per shift. Except now, because of the internet and everything else. You know, in the old days, a monk in the northern part of India would never have met someone in Tibet, let alone in Tokyo or Kyoto. or in Shanghai, it never would have happened. But now they meet all the time, or you can read everything about it on the internet. So it took a long time for these cultural transitions to happen and then to form a new shape. But now all of those meet here, like in the United States or in the West. So that's the context for the few koans that we're going to enjoy here and some of the things that we're going to do with them. So is that, we're okay? Any questions about the setup here so far or online? Anything? Yes.
I have a question about the koans.
Yes.
The question that popped into my mind is, does that mean we should be making an effort to translate the koan into our language and say, well, this means this and that means that? Or should we just face the koan and contemplate it without trying to understand it?
Yes. Yeah. The only way to do the first part is to do the second part. Mhm. And we're going to be doing that a little bit.
So is it Cohen as in like in Judaism, a Cohen?
Oh, okay. Thanks for, I forgot to say this. It's Koan,
Oh, okay.
koan. It literally in Chinese or Japanese in this case means a public case, like in law. It means like a public case because it's public and it's an interaction between two people that's been recorded. It's like a documented thing. It just means a public case. That's all it means. People, because they're so strange, people think, oh, a koan is like one of those riddles, like you're trying to solve. They're not riddles. They're just recordings of what happened between a teacher and a student, usually. They're encounter dialogues. But because the teacher is attempting to express something to the student and invite the student into a space that they're unfamiliar with, they're caught off guard. You see this happening here, right? Suddenly you're like, wait a minute, I came up here to talk about this, and how do we get here? What happened? My feet got knocked out from under me, but then you reached out and pulled me up from a different place. So we're gonna play with a few examples. Yeah.
I've heard religion is the answer, our answer to what happens when we die.
Uh-huh.
So how would we explain Zen in that context?
If someone came to you and asked what? You asked the question.
How does Zen Buddhism explain what happens to us when we die?
It doesn't. It helps you experience the life that you have alongside the reality that you know you're going to die and how that changes your relationship with yourself and everyone else. It's not some idea that says, now, this is what you can count on. It doesn't give you surety. It helps you deeply, deeply question. What does it mean to be alive, knowing you're going to die? That thing you've heard me say when Suzuki Roshi said, life is like getting into a rowboat, rowing out in the middle of the lake, knowing it's going to sink. And that's not the bad news. That's just the way it is. But that doesn't mean you don't get in the boat because you're already in it. There's nothing else to do. So you row with all you got and you watch the weather and the people and other. It's like, this is the great matter of birth and death. All is impermanent, quickly passing, Mahan.
So would you say it's more like Judaism in the sense of my understanding, shallow, but I understand is like, what are you going to do with this one precious life?
Yeah.
And what do you do now?
Right.
You don't talk about what happens afterwards. Because what's important is now.
Yes.
And how we treat each other now, and the mitzvahs we do now, not in order to mitzvah, in order to.
Right. And if you go back to the beginning of Buddhism, out of which Zen sprang, the Buddha was not interested in gods or what happened after he was only interested in why do we suffer and what can we do about it. And so if he asked about, well, what about all these things? Like, that's not my question. And why Stephen Batchelor has written very beautifully about it. He says Zen or Buddhism is essentially the practice of deep agnosticism. In other words, that word was made up by not Algis, but the other Huxley. Anyway, he said they were like elite people in Britain. So he would go to his club and hang around and smoke cigars and drink whiskey or whatever they did, and they had conversations. But a lot of the conversations were about politics and religion. But he was not religious. So he said, I wanted a tail like all the other foxes. He needed, so he said, what about don't know? Agnosis. I just don't know. It's not atheism. It's not rejection. It's like, what about, and so Buddhism is the deep practice of, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know. It's deep agnosticism. And then if you penetrate that question, see, Zen practice doesn't answer your questions, it questions your answers. And your life is your answer. If you want to know what your answer to all these philosophical things is right now, just look at your life. That's your answer. That's what you're living. Do you like the answer? So Zen helps us question our answer, not give us answers to our questions. Bring me a flower from the vase. Yeah, just anyone, just pull me out a flower. Maybe a big old sunflower, I don't care. Buddha holds up a flower, case 6 in the gateless gate. It's the first one in your thing about the koans. You're just sneaking that one to me.
Oh, I'm safe.
Yeah, okay. There you go. Who wants to read the case? And anybody online can do it too, but who wants to read the case? Anybody volunteer? Okay. So here we go. Just read the case.
Case. Once in ancient times, when the world honored one, was that Mount?
Whatever that is.
Held up a flower, twirled it, and showed it to the assemblage. At this, they all remained silent. Only the venerable Kashyapa broke into a smile. The world-honored one said, I have the eye, treasury of the true Dharma, the marvelous mind of nirvana, the true form of no form, the subtle gate of the Dharma. It does not depend on letters, especially transmitted outside all teachings. Now I entrust Mahakashyapa with this.
So it says Kashyapa up on top, and then it says Mahakashyapa. It changes, doesn't it? You know what Maha means? Great. The great Kashyapa. So something happened there. So the Buddha is sitting there up in front like I am, and there's a bunch of people and he's talking to them, and he happens to have a flower. And he's, fiddling with the flower, not saying anything for a bit. And he looks over, and I'm looking at you now, and he sees you looking and smiling and noticing what I'm doing. And Buddha says, she's got it. She didn't say anything, she didn't do anything, but I can tell everybody else is like waiting for the next thing to say and not knowing what's going on. But you're like, but you can't even say what it is, can you? So read the verse.
In handling a flower, the tail of a snake manifested itself. Kashyapa breaks into a smile. Nobody on earth or in heaven knows what to do.
What's that breath? And that look on your face? What just what?
There's nothing to be said or done. Healing.
Yeah, it's the meeting. So Dan, read the little commentary.
Can you read it loud?
Yeah, so they can make sure, in fact, read towards the screen, maybe.
The tail of the snake. What is the snake? It refers to
Shakyamuni.
Shakyamuni when he handles a flower. Not only the tail, not only his hand, but also his whole essential nature manifests itself. Holding up a flower is the manifestation of the whole. Every moment is the manifestation of the whole.
Read that sentence 2 more times.
Every moment is the manifestation of the whole. Every moment is the manifestation of the whole. Life itself is, therefore, nothing but the continuous moment of the whole. And everybody is living the continuous moment of the whole.
Everybody's living what?
The continuous moment of the whole.
Everyone
Everyone
is what?
living the continuous moment of the whole.
But
At the time of Shakyamuni, only
Kashyapa,
could recognize it and broke into a smile, as if to say, today, Shakyamuni Buddha is giving us a very special sermon. Nobody on earth or in heaven except Mahakashyapa
uh-huh.
knew what to do. They just stood there like idiots.
Is that great?
That's good.
But there is something to do. Like I have this flower that if I keep holding it, it'll just dry out, right? So what do you do with it, Dan? Yeah. So would you put it back? I mean, make it simple. It doesn't have to be complicated. What's required? Oh, it needs to go back in the vase. Yeah, yeah. You saw where she got it. A simple action can contain the whole universe. It's the meeting which makes it come alive. Not just the action of the teacher or the response of the student. And we see this, right? Both may be inconceivable or strange. For example, maybe after today or maybe another day, you probably won't remember very much what happened in our interactions yesterday. Like you couldn't recount. Like who came up and was there the one who said, what will you remember? Yeah, and what happened in you, that's what you remember. And it's not even exactly this kind of memory, is it? We end up shaped differently. So it may be inconceivable or strange, but not the intimacy. Not the intimacy that's under the robe, like we were talking about with Emily. That's not strange. It's hard to see because it's so simple. And so that's why this is a good place to start. And it's the first transmission we talk about of. And so when you chant the lineages, you start with Mahakashyapa from the Buddha. The first one he transmitted to. Mm-hmm. You ready to go to the next one? Doing okay?
What does Maha mean again?
Maha means great.
Oh, okay. I thought you said 8,
Yeah.
and I was
No,
trying to.
not
figure
8,
that
great, big. The second one is Joshu's Wash Your Bowls. Joshu was a really important teacher. This is case number 7 in the Gateless Gate. Even this collection of koans has a great name, the Gateless Gate. Somebody want to read this case? Now that you know what you're in for. I'm sorry that is that a problem? with it managing the,
Your microphone doesn't pick it up well, so I'm turning
is that
this
okay? Does
microphone
that
on when
work
the
for you
group
guys
talks.
online? If he helps? Okay, I just don't want to make it too hard.
All right.
Okay, and who else wants to read? And we need two people.
Oh, two people, yeah.
Someone online.
Marla.
Marla, okay, Marla,
Marla.
alrighty. Marla, you be the monk and she'll be Joshu. Okay, so first you just read the whole case and then we're gonna come back and we're gonna do it, okay?
Okay, all right. A monk asked Joshu in all earnestness, I've just entered this monastery. I beg you, master, please give me instructions. Joshu asked, have you eaten your rice gruel yet? The monk answered, yes, I have. Joshu said, then wash your bowls. The monk attained some realization.
Okay, so yeah, echoey. So you'll be Joshu.
Okay.
And Marla's gonna be the monk who's asking the question.
And is there going to be an MC? A monk asked Joshu, is that going to be somebody else or me?
I didn't hear what you said.
Okay, never mind. Okay, I'll start. I have,
Hold on, my microphone is off.
I think she's wondering who's reading the case.
Who's reading the case?
She gets it now.
You don't have to put the commentary, just do the dialogue.
okay. I have just entered this monastery. I beg you, master, please give me instructions.
Have you eaten your rice gruel yet?
Yes, I have.
Then wash your bowls.
Well, that doesn't sound very spiritual, does it? What the heck? And yet it somehow lands in an interesting way, doesn't it? So read the commentary.
Joshu, opening his mouth, showed his gallbladder and revealed his heart and liver. If the monk, hearing it, did not really grasp the fact, it would mistake the bell for a pot.
Strange language, right? What? Imagine, make a funny image in your mind. Imagine you could open your mouth so big that you could see down into your insides. It looked like an ordinary conversation, didn't it? You know, teach me. Well, did you eat your breakfast? Yeah, so we'll wash up. So this sounds strangely familiar, doesn't it? How?
Simplicity of it.
Do the next thing.
Yeah, doing things.
But it's in the commentary, Muman, who made this commentary, says, this is the teacher revealing himself fully. And when Marla heard it, if she didn't grasp that fact, that reality, then she might be confused. She'd think this thing is that, she wouldn't understand what's going on. So Marla, you read the verse. Hold on, he's getting your audio.
Just because it is so clear, it takes us longer to realize it. If you quickly acknowledge that the candlelight is fire, you will find that the rice has long been cooked.
So the first sentence is not too complicated, is it? It's what I just said a moment ago. Just because it's so clear, it takes us longer to realize it. Oh, it's already happening. We're already in the midst of the universal reality. Everything is unfolding as it should be. But because of our opinions and our preferences and all this, It's like, this can't be it. Really? Like, this is it? And what about the next part? Marla? If you quickly acknowledge the candlelight is fire,
You will find that the rice has been cooked.
is this pointing to anything for you? Well, let me ask you a question. Is a candle a very big fire? No, it's tiny, isn't it? It's a small thing. And cooking rice is a big deal in China. The fulfillment of something that's going to nourish us all. Maybe the full nourishment of our lives can be found in the smallest things. If we know how to look and attend. Like washing your bowls. It's time for breakfast. Eat your breakfast. This is a strange dialogue in which there's nothing extra, like, oh, why and what does this mean and what's the image? No, it's very straightforward. And if we live our lives in a very straightforward manner and do what's right in front of us wholeheartedly, without a lot of fussing with reality, it turns out differently.
I was assuming that it took a long time to cook the rice with a small little light. And somehow it's gonna take us a long time to fully awaken.
Could be. But if you, the candle is going to be the one cooking. It's just if you realize that even in the smallest detail, it's like Zen training is really simple instructions to do what's in front of you. And the portal to the absolute, if you want to enter the absolute, get very precise and specific here and now. Big philosophical kind of things, you know, we just get all over, it's a mess. But if you do one thing completely, it's the entryway. That's why, for example, in poetry, which we use a lot, the specific feel and touch and time of something takes you into it, the specificity. It's also why I emphasized yesterday, in our case, fulfilling each form completely. You're not getting somewhere special or holy. There's no perfection or purity, I think I talked about in inquiry. There's no shortcuts. It's not like the student wanted some fancy teaching, and what he got is like wash your dishes. It's like, I came all the way here for that. You're not going to get some new fancy spiritual thing. That's just spiritual materialism. Oh, now I have that. It's just the next thing. It's just this and just this and just then this and then this. It's the shorthand that I've offered you from the very first retreat for all of this is, how simple are you willing to let this be? It doesn't mean just that. You see where now it's pointing to?
I just have a question. I have trouble with the word quickly. You know, I'm trying to learn to not react quickly, but to let things sink in. What should I make of that word?
Where is it now?
Oh, on the second to last line, if you quickly acknowledge that the candlelight is fire.
Ah. Mm-hmm. I don't know what the original word was. This is translated from Chinese, and God knows how many iterations it's gone through. So I would say it has more like immediacy or something like that, I would guess. In other words, if you can immediately see that what's in that little tiny candle flame is fire, and you don't have to quibble with it, then you're nourished by the fullness of that moment. So it's a good question. Thanks for saying that. So in the first one, we talked about a simple action in meeting and intimacy as a portal. Here, simple instructions, fulfilling each form completely. Now the next one, Zwigan, calls himself master. This one's really strange. So who wants to do this one? Yeah, great, Libby. You do this one all by yourself.
All right then.
Read the case.
The case. Every day, Master Zugan used to call himself Master and would answer yes. Again, he would call, thoroughly awake, and he would answer yes, yes. Don't be deceived by others any day or any time. No, no.
Okay, now stand up. And now read it again, only change all the pronouns to she and say Master Libby. I know, it's
What I
fun.
did this morning. Every day, Master Libby used to call to herself, Master, and would answer yes. Again, she would call, thoroughly awake, and she would answer, yes, yes. Don't be deceived by others any day or any time. No, no.
You do that so well. What did you mean by you did this morning?
Oh. Wake up. Are you thoroughly awake? Yes.
Yeah, it may have to do with getting awake in the morning, but it has to do with more than that, doesn't it?
Yes.
Uh-huh. So somebody's going to read the commentary back to you.
Okay.
So you can have a seat.
What?
You can have a seat
Okay.
unless you want to say more.
No, I mean, this is good.
Okay, who's going to read the commentary? Okay.
Old Libby herself, or read it as.
First read it like it is. Old Zwigan.
Old Zwigan himself eyes and spells. He has many puppet gods and devils with which he plays. But why? Look, one is calling, one is answering, one keeps awake, one is not deceived by others. But if you get stuck there, that's not it. If you are to imitate Zwigan, it would be the understanding of a fox.
I know, that's right. So read it, female Libby now.
Okay.
You don't have to say old.
It's okay.
Say beautiful.
Beautiful Libby herself cries and spells. She has many puppet gods and devils with which she plays. But why? Look, one is calling, one is answering, one keeps awake, one is not deceived by others. But if you get stuck there, that's not it. If you were to imitate Libby, it would be the understanding of a fox.
So what's going on here? What's the comment pointing to?
IFS parts.
I was gonna say.
Parts? It's easy, isn't it, to have ideas and favorite teachers and teachings and books and this and that in religion, the puppets and gods and devils which you play with. It's being a little pokey, poking at this stuff. It's easy to have that. But why? When you're everything. Look, I'm calling and I'm the one answering. This is all embodied when you sit zazen. You're not deceiving anybody. When you sit zazen or you chant, or we see who you are. When we do the confession or repentance, all my ancient twisted karma from beginningless greed, hate, and delusion, born through body, speech, and mind, I now fully avow, means I stand up in the middle of my life and admit, yep, that's me. Not I'm a terrible sinner, not I should be better. It's just saying, yes, I am the result of all the tangled karma that made this here. All my ancient tangled, from beginningless greed, hate, and delusion. It's not your fault. From beginningless greed, hate, and delusion. But you do carry it in your body, speech, and mind. Born through body, speech, and mind. So it's important to take responsibility and fully avow. No, this is how it is in me. This is how I'm carrying it. Because without seeing that and knowing that, you're not, that's waking up. That's what you're calling to. He calls himself, she calls herself master. Not Libby and somewhere else's master. No, master. And then you answer, hi. In Japanese, yes. Hi. In the original koan. And then, like, wake up, wake up. And like, okay, I got it. Like, don't be deceived by others. No. Trust yourself. Find yourself. Be yourself. That understanding of a fox, there's some esoteric Chinese meaning in there, but basically it's like not the usual way. So read the verse, Libby.
The reason those who learn the way don't realize the truth is simply that they perceive the discriminating consciousness they've had all along. It is the origin of endless life and death. Fools take it for the essential self.
That's not quite so obscure, is it? We're back to your parts itself, right? The reason those who learn the way don't realize the truth fully, can learn it, is they perceive that discriminating consciousness that they're using is the origin of endless cycles of life and death, staying caught in all these ideas. And we get enamored by these self-like parts, the parts of us we think are ourselves and think it's the real deal. Here's a quote from the book on emerging of difference and unity that we were talking about yesterday. Here's an interaction between a student and Suzuki Roshi. Because in the book, you get his lectures, but they also transcribe the question and answer. Here's the student. I have some trouble with the relevancy of this lecture. I'd like you to say one more thing about it, but I don't know what. That's helpful, right? I can't quite see what it's all about. I do understand what it's about when you're talking about opposites and things like that. Suzuki Roshi said, the purpose of what I'm saying is to open a different approach to your understanding of reality. He's not saying the purpose of what I'm saying is to give you some information. The purpose of what I'm saying is to open a different approach to your understanding of reality. You are observing things from just one side or the other, and you stick to some one-sided understanding. That is why I'm talking in this way. It is necessary. Strictly speaking, Buddhists have no teaching. We have no God or deities. We don't have anything. What we have is nothingness. That's all. So how is it possible for Buddhists to be religious? What kind of composure do we have? That will be the question. The answer is not some special idea of God or a deity, but rather the understanding of the reality we are always facing. Where are we? What are we doing? Who is he? Who is she? When we observe things in this way, we don't need a special teaching about God because everything is God for us. Moment after moment, we are facing God. And each one of us is also God or Buddha. So we don't need any special idea of God. That may be the point. Interesting, huh? It was did I tell you the story about the Montessori school in Austin with the Lama came in the Bell meditation? So I'll tell you anyway. It's good. It's one of my friends, and her son was about 7, I think, at that time, and it was a Montessori school where a bunch of my friends had their kids, and this was actually Suzanne Lama Suryadas came, and there was a bunch of students of Suryas, and so they asked if he'd come to the school. So he came to the school, and he was hanging out with the kids, and they would sit meditation for like a minute, kids, and he had a bell like this, and so he let them play with the bell and kind of see, and he said, when we ring the bell, how many of you know where the sound goes? Now, if I ask you all of that, well, how many of you would raise your hand? Every kid raised their hand. They knew where it went, And they talked about that for a little while. And he said, sometimes Zoom thinks I raised my hand. He said, sometimes people think, remember, he's in Austin, Texas, speaking to people who are in a pretty Christian-centric community. He said, some people think the sound goes out into the universe, or maybe goes to God, or something like that. So he said, I'm going to sit and I'm going to ring the bell, and we're going to sit for a minute and then see if you can see where it goes, if it was what you thought. So they all sit there, the kids are so cute. And he rang the bell, and they talked about it. So anyway, Denise drives her family van to pick up Ryan at the end of the day. A little 7-year-old Ryan, And so he gets in the car, and Denise says, how was school today? And you know what he said, of course. It was okay.
Yeah.
He's a little boy. It was all right. And she said, well, wasn't the Lama there? And he said, yeah. And he said, well, what happened? And he said, I don't know. She could tell he didn't want to say. And so he began to describe the bell meditation. He said, he had us sit, and he rang the bell, and he said, maybe it goes to heaven or God, and then we would see. And he said, so I sat there and I listened to the bell, and it rang and it faded, but he said it didn't go to God. I realized I was God. And she had to pull over. Can you imagine? Like he allowed this to be the reality, but he was just on that edge of being old enough to know it's not something you talk about, or that people would make fun of you. So he's really hesitant, but he told his mom, But this is what Suzuki Roshi is mentioning here. Like, it's in us. That's why you have to call out. Remember.
Could I offer something?
Mhm.
This is fascinating to me. After spending 4 years in seminary, which was interfaith, but I was there as a Christian, and in all of the classes, the professors, there was a lot of how many angels dance.
Oh, yeah.
Kind
A lot of philosophy stuff.
Just tons of philosophy. And someone would say something about Jesus and someone else would say, well, what do you mean by Jesus? And then would be off for a 2-hour conversation on that. And then professors would say, and then by your senior year, you had to define God, define revelation, and the professors would say, you better have your answer before you get to your first year of ministry, because you are going to need to spell it out for people. And so it was, and also, I supervised some people when I went back and I was on the faculty there and supervised interns. They were saying, now that I'm out of that seminary environment, I feel like myself again.
Yeah.
And it was just like,
You have to recover.
you're a recovering seminarian.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a cousin who is, he went to seminary. We grew up in a really deeply Christian family in Texas, and he became a corporate chaplain for a huge construction company in San Antonio. HB Zachary, they build like embassies and sports arenas. I mean, huge things all over the world. And he became like part of HR. He was the chaplain. And John is this great guy, really fun. So he's now retired because we've gotten older, and he's on his own now doing spiritual direction from a very interfaith. We've enjoyed each other over the years. And the tagline on his website says, pastor to the unchurched, healer to the overchurched. Isn't that great?
That's great.
Okay, I was just looking at our schedule to just see how badly I'm doing. We were supposed to go to 11, and then there's a Dharma activity, which we're now going to do. Is it okay to continue?
Yes.
Sure.
Okay, we're going to do one more koan. So far, we've had the flower, intimacy. We've had the washing the bowl, simplicity. We've had Zwigon, self-remembering. Okay, ordinary mind is the way, 19. We need Joshu and we need Nansen. We need those, we need 2 people. Who's going to enact this one? One more person. Okay. You and Dan. Would it help if they go in front of the screen to do it?
Sure.
Do they hear better?
Probably.
Okay. So take your scripts and go face each other. Okay, Dan, you're going to be Joshu. And not you're going to be nonsense. It's so easy to think nonsense. But it's not.
Got that.
Okay. And so here, do you have your script there, Ryan? Okay. So you read the case first, just all the way through, Ryan. And hopefully they'll be able to hear you right there.
The case. Joshu earnestly asked Nansen, what is the way? Nansen answered, the ordinary mind is the way. Joshu asked, should I direct myself toward it or not? Nansen said, if you try to turn toward it, you go against it. Joshu asked, if I do not try to turn toward it, how can I know that it is the way? Nansen answered, the way does not belong to knowing or not knowing. Knowing is delusion. Not knowing is a blank consciousness. When you have really reached the true way beyond all doubt, you will find it as vast and boundless as the great empty firmament. How can it be talked about on a level of right and wrong? At these words, Joshu was suddenly enlightened.
Okay. So without the commentary, then they're going to act it out now.
What is the way?
The ordinary mind is the way.
Should I direct myself toward it or not?
If you try to turn toward it, you go against it. The way does not belong to
Wait,
knowing.
Joshu has another line.
Oh, sorry.
Don't interrupt me. If I do not try to turn toward it, how can I know what is the way?
Well, the way does not belong to knowing or not knowing. Knowing is delusion. Not knowing is a blank consciousness. When you have really reached the true way beyond all doubt, you will find it as vast and boundless as the great empty firmament. How can it be talked about on a level of right and wrong?
So let's go back to the beginning. Now that you're enlightened. So read the first sentence, Joshu.
What is the way?
Okay. Is that a true statement from you, Dan?
Mhm.
You really interested, or you wouldn't be here, right?
Right.
You really want to know what the way is. Okay. And then Liz says,
The ordinary mind is the way.
is that something that resonates with you, Liz? Say more.
Paying attention to this is the way.
It's right here.
Careful consideration.
So at first he's wanting something not ordinary. And you're saying, actually, it's ordinary. And so you say back to her,
Well, should I direct myself toward it or not?
that's like, what am I supposed to do? Surely there's something I should be doing, right?
Mhm.
And then she very wisely says,
If you try to turn toward it, you'll go against it.
it's like this striving thing. It's actually not it, is it? And so then you say, well, then,
Well, if I do not try to turn toward it, how can I know that is the way?
so hold on. So that still is resonating true, isn't it, for you? It's like, I don't know what to do. So how am I going to know? Okay. Then the teaching comes, and you can play with this if you want, Liz, just go through it.
Well, you're asking, how can I know? And so I think the way does not belong to either knowing or not knowing. Knowing is delusion, not knowing is blank consciousness.
Say more about that. Knowing is delusion, meaning you try to nail it down.
Yeah, it's squiggly.
But this thing about not knowing, you can't just like go blank.
Yeah,
That's not it either. That's a cop out.
words. Dude, all I know is that really reach the true way beyond all doubt, then you will find it as vast and boundless as the great empty firmament. So, I mean, how can we talk about it as right or wrong?
Mhm.
You'll know. Or not.
There's another fun way to talk about that previous sentence.
Yeah,
The vast, the great empty firmament is vast and boundless. And it's beyond knowing or doubt. And when you step into that place, you know you're home. It's the great empty, the great fullness, the great emptiness, the great fullness, the great emptiness. It's vast and boundless. And it's beyond the knowing or not knowing. It's beyond doubt. And you can't really name it, but you can step into it.
What did you say?
So Ryan, read the commentary.
Nansen was asked a question by Joshu. and Nonsense base was shattered and melted away. He could not justify himself. Even though Joshu has come to realization, he will have to delve into it for another 30 years before he can realize it fully.
So, so Dan asked a question of Liz. And this interesting thing, Liz's base was shattered and melted away. She could not justify herself.
Oh,
What?
Because she can't know.
What is the base? It was shattered and melted away that you couldn't justify.
knowing.
Knowing. It's like, even though you were the teacher and knew all this stuff, you have to give it up in order to meet him. You can't hang out there wherever you are and whatever realization you have. And then, even though Dan, by asking these questions and meeting Liz, something moved, like all of us, we have these moments of realization, but to embody it and to come to understand it fully takes a lifetime. That's just the way it is. That's not because you're slow. These things keep opening and keep opening and keep opening. And we'll have our poet Ryan read the verse.
The spring flowers, the moon in autumn, the cool breezes of summer, the winter's snow. If idle concerns do not cloud the mind, this is man's or woman's or person's happiest season.
So now you make commentary on the verse, Ryan.
When you can be with ordinary things as they're happening, you can experience the greatest amount of happiness.
And pay attention to the rhythms of life. Each season, things happen. It's a rhythm. That's the way it goes. And if you don't get all caught up in yourself, you can notice that each season is pretty lovely. And there are moments when you feel grief. There are moments when you feel happiness. You know this very powerfully and painfully around some of your family issues. Great joy and then suddenly great grief. But if you don't get caught, if you let them be themselves, winter be winter, spring be spring, then there's peace. There's a possibility. This is one of my favorite poems. It's really rich, isn't it? And especially if you've already been shown through these other koans the intimacy and simplicity and self-remembering. It brings us back. So let me look at our schedule here. What I'd like for you to do is take a look at the other handout that we gave you last night called, what's it called? The ordinary, or what is it called?
Ordinary.
Ordinary life is the way? Or ordinary life? Ordinary practice. Ordinary life is the way. Is that right? So I've found this in the work of Padre Gotuma, who leads Poetry Unbound from On Being Studios in Minneapolis, Minnesota. So let's take a look at this. So Patrick writes, I asked, and I'm asking you now, I asked if everyone could write one-line responses to 8 prompts. The prompts are on the idea of the ordinary. You know, we're touching this. It's a strange word, ordinary, as it may imply something mundane, not out of the ordinary, but ordinary is unique to everyone. For some, ordinary is walking through a war zone on the way to work. For others, ordinary is 4 jobs in night school. For some people, ordinary is the stories they cannot tell. For others, ordinary is pressure. So ordinary is not so ordinary when it's shared. The prompts are about asking people to take one experience of ordinary and respond with short line responses. And there are the 8 prompts. For example, the first one, you write a line about something that has become ordinary for you. When I did this, what I wrote down was standing in my kitchen looking out the window. Our house has big views. And so I often will stand there and just, this is ordinary. So you're not trying to write poetry. You're not trying to do anything esoteric, really concrete. Where does this ordinary thing happen? You know, so I say what that is. That's number 2. 3, write a line about time. When did you notice this ordinary thing had become ordinary? Number 4, other surrounding events. What happens around it, you know, before it or after it? Whatever you want to write, just a line, just a line. Number 5, what is a single feeling you have about this ordinary thing? 6, what do you most wish to say about this ordinary thing? And this reminds me of Zwigon. You may wish to imagine yourself speaking to a person you think will listen. It could be yourself, you know, like Zwigon. Number 7, you write another line showing us an object that's associated with this ordinary. When I was doing it, I talked about how I'm holding my cup. You know, standing there looking out the window with a blank look on my face, you know, holding my cup. And 8, something about your body and this ordinary. So it seemed clear enough? You're going to write just one line things. I'm going to give you plenty of time to do this. So he says, these 8 lines are each meant to invoke a simple line. He says of poetry, but don't get confused by that. Just write a line of something. Just write something. In fact, the quicker the better. Just see what comes up. But it just takes a line to say, maybe your first line was, these days I wake up before the alarm at 5. You know, mine was standing in my kitchen looking out the window. Maybe the 4th line was, the 4th one is what? Surrounding events. I put tomorrow's lunch in the fridge the night before. Once you have your 8 lines, arrange them in the order of what's called a pantun. A pantun is a Malaysian form of poetry. And you see down below, take 8 lines that you've written and arrange them in this order. Each line repeated. So in this version of a pantun, the 8 lines make a 16-line poem. They're just ordinary lines. And so you write down the first line, the second line, the third line, and the 4th line. Then there's a line break in the poem, and then you write number 2, 5, 4, 6. See in there? Then you write 5, 7, 6. So there's going to be repetition. It is almost 11:30. So we only have 30 minutes before lunch. So what I'd like to do is actually send you out now. We're not going to do anything else. This has been a lot this morning. And take until the normal time we would have come back, which I think is 1:30, right? So you have 2 hours to have your lunch, to write your lines, to put your lines in the order so you'll have it, and then come back with it. Is that okay? And online, you guys too, because we're going to do something with it. And that way it gives you a little time to sit with it and you fiddle with it or be nervous, whatever you do. Enjoy it, hopefully. Play around with it. Ordinary life is the way. Got it? Questions?
This has to do with ordinary life. Can you remind us again? I know first we vow to
the seat of the Buddha and then to all the other Buddhas present, is that only before Zazen or preparing for Zazen? Or every time we come to the circle and find our seat?
Every time you come into the room when you've been out of the room, you're re-entering. That's when you do it. Other questions that are left over from anything this morning? There's no rush here, unless you have to go to the bathroom.
I know you'll say more about intimacy. Is it intimacy with or?
Just do this. We'll get back to it. Okay, any questions from anybody online? Did you have any concerns or anything about any of this? I hope you enjoyed playing with the koans. They're really, when you step into them and begin to enact them, something different happens, you know, even when you read the comments and some of the stuff. There are ways to find, and then just to not worry about it too much. Just play around, you know. The story of the Buddha is not a story of some guy 2,500 years ago in northern India. The story of the Buddha is your life, and it's happening now. And we practice to realize that. And one of my favorite lines, which I quote all the time, you're sick of hearing, I know, about this knowing stuff, from wonderful Zen teacher John Tarrant. Unkindness comes out of certainty. You see it happening all around us these days, right? Unkindness comes out of certainty. And when we throw away certainty, we have the bare reality of consciousness. Mirror. And another name for that is love. Unkindness comes out of certainty. We let go of certainty. We have the bare reality of consciousness. And another name for that is love. The only teaching. Okay, enjoy yourselves. Yes, question, sorry. Marla.
Will we
Hold on,
share?
he's going to get your audio up. Okay.
Will we be sharing these with others in small groups or what?
We're going to be sharing them with small people in small groups, yes.
Do you have an approximate time so I can be sure to get over there by then?
Yeah, we're going to do it after we come back from lunch.
Okay, great, thanks.
Yeah, when we come back from lunch, it says we're going to do movement practice, which we'll do, and then Zazen. But actually, we're going to go to this.
Okay.
I'm going to mess with the afternoon schedule a little bit because I want us to get to this.
Yes.
Because it'll be a really good intro to the ceremony.
Wonderful.
So just bring that with you when you come after lunch, okay?
Will do. Thanks.
Okay. Ready, set,
Go.
go.
Okay.
Once we launch,